so that there is a way in which he allows his body to really take over. My name is Naomi Beckwith. I am the Marilyn and Larry Fields curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. For Bill, this is a kind of metaphor. The artist is William J. O'Brien. I saw the work and I thought it was really incredible. It was a real odd mix of found objects, but also handcrafted objects. There were objects that looked to the southern U.S. culture. There were objects that looked to West African masquerade culture. But then there were plenty of things that looked like it could have come out of my grandmother's house. He's a wonderfully astute artist who's looked broadly to culture to create all of these works that somehow walk the line between craft and conceptualism. And better yet, he lives right here in Chicago. The Children of the Poor by Gwendolyn Brooks. People who have no children can be hard, attain a male of ice and insolence, need not pause in the fire, and in no sense hesitate in the hurricane to guard. And when the wide world is bitten and bewarred, they perish purely, waving their spirits hence, without a trace of grace or of offense, to laugh or fail, diffident, wonder-starred. While through a throttling dark we others hear the little lifting helplessness, the queer whimper whine, whose unridiculous, lost softness softly makes a trap for us, and makes a curse, and makes a sugar of the malocclusions, the inconditions of love. It's a very, very complicated poem. I should say my first interest is in Gwendolyn Brooks. She's someone that I learned about as a very, very young child. We learned a lot of Black history, not just during February of Black History Month, but throughout the year. And Gwendolyn Brooks, who was also the poet laureate of Illinois at the time, was a staple of our curriculum. Essentially, she is a woman who spent her life working with language, with poetry, not just prose. And within that, she also lived in a community with people who didn't have that kind of access to language and voice. And she was really interested in what does it mean to write through a kind of experience of being next to the voiceless. I grew up in Hyde Park, not very far from the DuSable Museum in Washington Park. And it was within walking distance. And so I could wander over there from time to time. And I would get inside to see the exhibitions. For me, I grew up in an era that was very much informed with the idea that art had to somehow speak to a public. And I think this is maybe why I became a curator rather than a critic. This is a very kind of Southern thing that usually are attributed to slave potters. I really see my calling is to translate what it is that artists do in the studio, in the world, what have you, into a space where the public can meet it. I'm really interested in championing the work that's often overlooked in mainstream institutions, but also thinking about what are some of the kind of registers of history that begin to inform the way some artists make their work. What shall I give my children who are poor, who are adjudged the least wise of the land, who are my sweetest lepers, who demand no velvet and no velvety velour, but who have begged me for a brisk contour, crying that they are quasi-contraband, because unfinished, graven by a hand less than angelic, admirable, or sure. My hand is stuffed with mode, design, device, but I lack access to my proper stone, and plentitude of plan shall not suffice, nor grief nor love shall be enough alone to ratify my little halves who bear across an autumn freezing everywhere. Just in her historic moment, as someone very much concerned with the Black arts movement, there wasn't that much separation between what the arts should be doing. So people were moving between the literary arts and the visual arts and the performance arts constantly, and Gwendolyn Brooks was no exception in that she was concerned with each. She's talking about contours and things being graven by hand. She's talking about tools, designs, devices, stones. These are sculptor's tools. She's literally thinking about the way the hand moves across the object. And I think she's very much looking at visual arts at the time. My mind most immediately goes to Elizabeth Catlett when I think about this, and these images from wood and of stone of these dark figures. The poem talks about the children being like sculptures, but they're too rough almost, and they don't think of themselves as beautiful. And Catlett's playing a lot with smoothness and roughness. While the surface of it is mostly very, very smooth, you can see little details in the eyes and in the ears where she's left just a little bit of that jagged edge. And I think she might be signaling to the idea that there's a kind of perfection and beauty and a perfection and symmetry and smoothness. But there's always going to be a mark of the hand and the roughness of the hand having to work over that surface to make the smoothness. And shall I prime my children to pray? Mites, come invade most frugal vestibules, spectre with crusts of penitence renewals, and all hysterics arrogant for a day. Instruct yourselves here is no devil to pay. Children, confine your lights in jellied rules, resemble graves, be metaphysical mules. Learn, Lord, will not distort nor leave the fray. Behind the scurryings of your neat motif, I shall wait, if you wish, revise the psalm. If that should frighten you, sew up belief. If that should tear, turn, singularly calm. At foreheads and at fingers rather wise, holding the bandage ready for your eyes.